Okay, welcome to everyone. It's a real pleasure to have Astrid Ottenheym here, who is the CEO of one of the networks of inclusive education for primary education, very close by, Alkmaar.
In Alkmaar, yes. Yes.
And I'm also really pleased to have her because she is still part of a research project that we're doing, which is about inspection and accountability of educational networks. And Astrid is one of the networks participating in this study, but that's not what she will be talking about today. She will be talking about her own PhD work, which she is doing in addition to being a CEO of a network. So a very busy woman. So really pleased to have you here to talk about your work.
And nice that I can talk about it. I'm really also a little bit excited. I'm not speaking often in English, but
can you tell us how long you will be talking for, whether there will be room for questions?
Yeah, you can. I can talk for half hour. I can talk for hours, but I won't do that. But you can also ask questions in between.
Okay.
So I know when it is difficult to have your own question and you can't hear me anymore. That is a pity. So you can ask questions in between.
Okay.
I'm really happy that I'm here and talk about teachers' multi-perspective taking in coping with disruptive classroom behavior. Who am I? What I'm doing, who am I? Is something different, but what I'm doing, Melanie told already, I am a managing director of an educational district, 104 schools. And I'm also an ambassador of a Dutch national network to collaborate education and youth care. That is really new. In 2015, they started with a new law about youth care, and now they thought, okay, inclusion. And it is also important that we collaborate. And I'm really one of the first active ambassadors. I'm doing a PhD. The PhD started in 2019. I'm not doing alone. I started alone with a question. And I asked the question all the time, how can I help? Because I see that a lot of teachers, a lot of parents, a lot of students have problems with disruptive behavior. How can I help? Why? What is the problem? And so I started to ask a lot of questions, and then somebody from the ministry and somebody from Oberon Research Institute said, Astrid, is that there's a call from the NVO? Is that not something for you? Probably no. More public. Welcome.
Sorry, you're located.
So I started, and then I had two people and asking about what can we do. And then now when I see now how many people are involved with the research, it is a network. Really, it is a network with a lot of schools, with a lot of teachers, teacher trainers. So I'm really proud on it. And also the Ministry of Education is involved because they said it is really interesting what you are doing. Now, you can't do it alone. Starting in 2019, now I hope my co-author Anna Spaak, said he hopes in the beginning of 2024 that I can do my dissertation. Now, what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about three explorative research. One is about the exploration of the research literature. One is about the articles also just published in an international journal. I want to talk about how teachers in the actual doing can research that also. Because in the actual doing, how do they take a multi-perspective? And what kind of attributions do they make? And we did do an effect study, and we are now analyzing all the statistics and all the things and writing everything very neat down. Yes? So I'm going to tell you about that. Is it okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah? I hope that Now, why? Disruptive classroom behavior is really a huge problem. Despite all the investments, and it is not only a problem for the pupil, but also a problem for parents, stress in coping, help, my child is not doing well, and the teacher. There's a lot of teacher stress also. So it is, and what you see is that there's an important reason for exclusion, suspensions. Also, not only here in the Netherlands, but also in the States, and I've read a lot of literature. I see it everywhere in the rest of the countries. So it's really a huge problem. And also we see an increase of mental disorder because of disruptive behavior. And yeah, what is the reason? Because the investments, also the political investments, are huge. There's really an interesting studies from the Pijl, from Groningen. He said, yeah, also a lot of investment and nothing changed. It stays. Now it's just a dissertation from Karen. Oh, I forgot her
last name.
Eh?
Last name.
Last name, yes. It calls boomerangbeleid. And this boomerangbeleid in youth care and education. And you see that everybody tries to do their best, but the result, nothing's changed. Even gets worse. No. And it is really, it impacts student learning outcomes and also the ability to cope in society. It's always the people, when they are adults, who it is a little bit problematic. Some severe, and with also psychiatric problems, there's also criminality, crime, and so on. Now, and it impacts also the teacher's workload and stress, a lot of stress, pleasure in working, and the self-efficacy. So the belief.
Just ask a real basic question.
Yeah.
Is there like a conceptual clarification on what disruptive classroom behavior actually is? Because it's I can imagine that's very much in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, it's difficult. They tried to dissolve it and to find a definition. Yeah. There's no definition, right? Because it is already in 1971 they tried to do it, but they say it is in on continuum from a really a behavior what is criminal, seen as criminal, and also little kind of things. It is really depends also on the norms and also the emotional state of the person who looks to the behavior. So it is difficult. There's no norm. Koskela and Lanas, they are researchers in Finland, and they do research about teachers who made descriptions in an assessment, an official assessment about the behavior where the assessors make a decision that has impact of the later the coffee and the tea. And they found that in the 365 description of behavior from the teacher, that it is depending on the norms of the teachers themselves. Yeah. So, no definition. And of course, there are definitions about, but I will come later. Yeah. Otherwise, it impacts also the student-teacher relationship. And when a teacher thinks, oh, the behavior is difficult and has a lot of stress, then she goes and also see the behavior of the whole classroom as more negatively. So it can turn around in a negative spiral. Like Kalinsky, he says, and is in the United States, he said, it's more depending on how the behavior of the teacher and the principal. It's more important in how the behavior of the student himself. So it is really difficult. What we see also that is the beliefs and the attributions of the teachers, they are important. And they influence also the coping of the teacher, the decisions they make. So that is, and Weiner did do already a very long research about that. And the description of the behavior are normative, I told already. And what you also see is the behavior of the student is always, the attributions are on the child or the parents. And what you see, there was a study already in Minneapolis in 1983, and from the 174 teachers, only 10 teachers thought that perhaps the problem, the cause of the problem of the behavior was laying in the school or their teaching. All the other teachers thought it is because of child, is a problem, child factors. And what also a researcher here in the Netherlands saw is Wienen. He saw that the context is a blind spot. And context is also my Walter Staal use psychiatrist felt also. Context is important. Also when you have in your DNA or in your nature, you have characteristics that can cause for psychiatric problems or psychiatric diseases. The context make it if they appear or not. So the nature-nurture question. And we forget the context, the nature. We look to the problem behavior to the child. Now, an intervention is also the focus on the child. We want to change the behavior of the child. Therefore, you have also a lot of suspensions. Or that is, we say you have to go to special education or to youth care. What we see in the last decades that in 1990, one of the 27 young people had youth care. Now it's 108. So it is really grow a lot. And what is teachers' attributions may systematically biased. And I'm going to tell you how that can. And perhaps multi-perspective team can solve it. I don't know, we can change it.
A question?
Yeah.
You said one of the 8 children, they have youth care?
Yeah, in the Netherlands.
Kind of care, it's quite a huge amount. What kind of help is it?
Small and big. Yeah,
okay.
Everything. But it's all in a therapy kind of way.
Yes. It can also be like an in-school program or extra program.
Yeah. But the most youth care in the Netherlands is at home. So they are orientated at home. We are now bringing it together because it is really problematic when education is doing this and youth care is doing that and they don't communicate. That's really problematic. Therefore, we are now trying to integrate it.
Okay.
It is, I can give you an example in Alkmaar, in the youth care there, you have almost more than 150 organizations who give some of kind of youth care treatment. So there's really a lot. And we like to dismiss it a little bit.
What organizations are these? Is that not KBZ or what kind of organization?
A lot of. There are also ZZP'ers, small bureaus, till big as Falan and GGZ, and this really goes like this. Yeah. It's also a market.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Bias. I talked about the what is behavior, that it is no definition on it. I told about the attributions, and now the Rosriot and Cousin, they found already for a long time ago that when you have assessments about behavior, that the informant's description is not the same. Everybody perceives the behavior in a different way. And that has, of course, a very big impact. And it is also that a problem for the assessor. What are you going to do, and what will you decide, and what whose story is true? And that is why also Gelbach and Friesema said it is very important that everyone's perspective is biased. And it's very important to know how it is that biases works. Because, our brain wants to protect. We can't, when we have stress, our vision is, our working brain is, has not so much space anymore. So it wants to cognitive efficient, being efficient, but and you want also protection mechanism, some unconsciously, to protect ourselves. Because I thought that I have always a good vision about other's behavior, and now I see it wrong. You want to protect yourself, and it's also with a teacher. A teacher in a class of 30 students, he is always making a lot of decisions, small and big ones. And it has to be in a quick way sometimes. Also to cope and with time and all the, it's also a little bit protecting yourself. So it can be biased. Is that clear? Yes? Now, and that bias is, it's a human habit, I can say. Everybody, also here, we think we are objective. That is very difficult. We can try to do it. And we can do it in a way that we have to make effort of it. Because our sense of self is an automatic response, and we call it egocentric perspective. We are normally used to look from our own perspective and to judge from our own perspective. And what we have to do when we want to try to take another person's perspective, we have to be motivated to do it, in a relatively good mood to do it. And we know it is hard work, especially when the other person's view is very differently. It costs a lot of brain energy. But it is really helping. We know from a study from judges that when judges are in advance of their courts, they learn a little bit about the perspective of the other, to stand in the shoes of the other, they make better decisions. So that is really interesting. So perspective taking can help to derail biases. Now, and what you see in the mostly, we have talk about single perspective taking. That is, take the perspective from a pupil or a student or the parent, but that is a single perspective taking. And also the perspective of that person can be biased. So it is good in a classroom to take a multi-perspective. So you take a perspective of the child, of the parents, the social network, the context where the child is growing up in. And what is also interesting is social perspective taking. That is to take the perspective to stand in the shoes of the culture. That is in America, Gelbach Frissema started research on that. And it started with the military. When the military go to another country and they don't understand the culture there, and they make decisions to shoot or not to shoot. So, and then is it very important to understand the communication very well. When you misjudge, this can be disastrous. They learned how to, in the social perspective thing, they learned how to make more hypnotizing than one, your own. Yeah? Is that clear a little bit? Yeah. But then we thought, yeah, what is known about perspective taking? It looks promising in all the literature, but is that also in what says the research by perspective taken by teachers and coping with disruptive classroom behavior? We first started with a systematic literature review, almost 2,000 records, nothing could be included. And so we had to start again in another way. And when we started with the scoping review, and then you go to all the databases with and to try to find something. And I had also the help with a specialist in that one, because it is really that you can't do proper search, develop proper search strings without help. And yeah, but the result was 4 databases, and result was 1,791 records, and 6 studies could be included. So it's really not so an subject what is studied a lot. But well, the questions and our results is, yeah, what kind of perspectives do teachers take in coping with pupils' disruptive behavior? That question couldn't be answered in that way, because the researchers predetermined a single perspective. 5 studies did research in the teachers took the perspective of the pupil, and 1 study that of the parent. And there was 1 Dutch study, and the rest all of the United States. Now, what is also, how do teachers' perspective take impact their coping with pupils' disruptive classroom behavior? The how, that was not researched. What was investigated, the impact. And the impact, we saw that it was really positive. We saw that the perspective taking can be learned, but it's not automatically done by teachers. You have to coach, and you have to help so they take the other person's perspective. You see in the study of McKnight, you see also a lot of how do you say it? The teachers have a lot of ideas about the parents, and they're not checking it, and that stops the communication, that stops the interaction, and that's really a pity, because then when it is difficult, it is it's very, very important to take the other perspective and to communicate with that person. That is what her research really showed very well. And to create a more empathic mindset, students like teachers with an empathic mindset. Students are not going to work better for teachers who have strong strong interaction, who have and say you're not doing it wrong, you do it wrong, and give suspensions or things like that. It's not the way that students going to behave better and to be motivated. That is really important. What a big study of the Okinawa showed us. Okinawa saw also really a big drop down in the suspensions rate by doing that. Teachers let take the perspective of the pupil. More positive views about the behavior. And what is also interesting, when the teachers have a more positive view about student behavior, they see also more ways to cope with it. They have more higher expectations. That is really important for learning. Yeah, and yeah, positive, also positive effect on the relationship. So that is what we find in the scoping review. We know multi-perspective taking. So perspective taking is understudied and looks promising, but yeah, that is what we know now. And further, I have here also the classroom. What you see in what we think that in a classroom is that multi-perspective taking is important, because a classroom is really an interactive environment. Not only the interaction from teacher between the student, but you have the students interacting with each other and with the teacher, and also the parents behind that also interacting. So it is a really a network of interacting people. So you can't say this is the cause or not. So that is really difficult. You can't do that in a classroom, and that is really important. Therefore, we thought we have to study further and more in the actual and actual doing from the teachers, and not in a kind of laboratory way of research. Yeah, is it still following and understandable? Okay. Because the second trend we saw in the small studies that we saw that the perspective taking is mostly research and in surveys or semi-structured interviews. You have Pianta and a lot of kind of reviews, but not in the actual doing. How is it in the actual doing? Yeah, I told you about IJsseldijk research in 1983 about the attributions. It's a long time ago. I told you about the research of Koskela and Lanas, who studied 356 records of teachers. That is only about the attributions and how the descriptions of, but not multi-perspective taking, and not really the kind of attribution. So we were curious, how does it look? And in the Netherlands, it's we make all teachers make when for children with special needs, also with disruptive behavior, they make a needs-based case report, called also in Dutch an ontwikkelingsperspectiefplan, and it's based on the principles of assessment for intervention from Paarmeijer and Beukering. And here you see it is, you see the stages, is observation, understanding, planning and realization, and so on. It is the normal cycles of decision analyzation and decision making. Then the observation stage and the stage of understanding we used for our research. Here we could observe how the teacher, about what kind of perspective the teachers take, how they make their observations, because teachers, the instrument helps the teachers to look to the child factors, to the educational and learning environment, the home situation, and the social network. And then they also look to the risk factors, the weaknesses and the strengths. And here in the stage of understanding, you go to attribute to goals and needs. What is necessary where we work on? What is necessary when we want to reach that goal? What is necessary for the child, for the teacher, for the parent to the needs to fulfill the goal? That clear? Yes? Okay. Now, why did we do that? I told already, the actual doing was not known. We wanted to examine the extent of teachers' multi-perspective taking, because we don't know. It is for the needs-based working, it is necessary. But if they do it, nobody knows. And so we did for our research questions, what perspectives are taken and what are the consequential attributions. Now, this is, I'm almost ready with writing this article in the last details. Yeah, what we search is 80 case reports, needs-based case reports. And we did do a cross-sectional study. And what we saw is that the teacher are aware of the multi-perspectives. But what they do, how they look to it, they interpret it. So 80% of the observations are subjective, not objective. So they are interpretations of what they think they see about because of their theories, their experiences, about their norms, and etc. And what we saw that 29% of the observations are from the teacher, not from the child, not from the parents, no, from the teacher. And what we also saw that in the stage of observation, I thought I was, wow, I didn't expect that, because I saw that the amount of weaknesses and strengths were almost similar. Okay, wow. But then we did take a closer look. And then we saw that when the teachers, when they make their observations about the pupil or the home situation or the social network, the weaknesses were more than the strengths. And when we looked to the educational learning situation, we saw a different pattern. We saw that there, the teachers did write down more strengths than weaknesses. And that was always what we did found in other research. So the
weaknesses of what?
Weaknesses of the educational learning situation. That can be weaknesses of teachers herself or in the group. That's not a nice environment for it can be everything.
But related to the observed problematic behavior.
Everything related to the observed problematic behavior. Yes. And what we then see in the stage of understanding, that the teachers go in their writings, and in their writings, they have more focus on the weaknesses of the pupil, and the other context disappeared. So that is really, and our conclusion is that suggests that there's a lot of limitations also, is that, the multi-perspective taking is not an actual practice of teachers.
So you would say that there's a difference between having an awareness of multiple perspectives compared to actually taking a different perspective.
Exactly.
What would be the difference?
The difference is when you are aware, you look to it by your own yourself perspective, and you judge it, and you interpret the behavior from the parents, for example, or the social network. But when you take a multi-perspective, you go and stand in the shoes of the parent. So, and that is and you are going to check also what I think the teacher is feeling, or the parent is feeling. Is that correct? Standing in the shoes of a person is really an active action. Is a really deliberate decision, and you write things differently down. You write things down more objective and from the perspective of the parent.
And you become more objective because you've been able to put yourself in the shoes of yourself a person, but also because you were able to have a conversation with them and check if your estimation is right or preconceptions.
That's correct. And then you are going to make different resolutions. And that is the third research.
Can I ask one more question about these? What is analyzed here? Is it the report of the teacher about?
It is, what I showed you here. This is needs-based case reports. You see the circle, and teachers write information down in the several headers.
Okay.
Yes.
The reports are like the weaknesses and the strengths of the child.
Yeah, and that from the from the four contexts: child, the educational and learning environment, the home situation, and the social network.
Okay.
Yeah, and they the teachers know the needs-based working. They are familiar with it. They are familiar with how this needs-based case report works, what is important, and they know also that you can do it together with the parents, so or with the child or with other important people you think they are involved with it. So the teacher has freedom, and the teacher knows how to make a qualitative assessment.
And they write this report.
Yes.
Why? They write this report why? To get access to specific support for the child?
No, they write this report, I hope, to understand the behavior or the needs of the pupil very well. That's meant to it.
Okay, but how did they decide who to write this report about? Or do they write this report about every child in their classroom?
No, only in special education, teachers have to write it for every child in the classroom. But in a regular school, the teacher decides on what pupil I have difficulties, or what pupil I see the development is not working. But for this research, we asked 41 teachers. We wanted to participate in our research to choose 2 children with difficult behavior And they filled for this research 2 case reports, need-based case reports.
So it's an existing system then?
It is an existing system. Yeah, yeah. We use an existing system once we wanted to, to get a feeling about the actual, way of multi-perspective taking.
So if you analyze that much of the things that are written on the perspective of the teacher, but in such a report, how can a teacher describe, like, if something is not their own perspective? If they say, like, the children has difficulties with emotion regulation or something, it's like maybe the teacher's perspective, but how can they write it in reports so that it's analyzed as multi-perspective?
Yeah, that is really a good question. Are you equipped to write objective observations in a way? And when you say a child tells me something, that is objective. And you say, yeah, the pupil told me blah 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 blah. That is really objective. So you can write it down. Then you know, okay, it is from the pupil's perspective, not the teacher her story, and that is objective. But when I write down as a teacher, but most times you can do it. Yeah, there's a little bit technical, filmic, an observation. Then you can make you can play it afterwards, and you think, okay, I know the situation, I know what I see, but when we say, oh, the child is always angry, yeah, what do I know? Or when he is, always he is making troubles. Yeah, what I can't understand then what the behavior is of the child. It has to need to be more objective. And that's really also we learn now that it is always you have to teach us to learn how to write that down very quick, short, not in long sentences, because we write a lot.
So can you give an example of what that would look like? Like you have a classroom situation with an example of students being disruptive. How would you write that in a report like this?
Yeah, when then you write it down. Which moment? Always, often is not known. Must be exactly. And exactly, for example, when I go a boy 5 years old, and when we go sit in a circle, and after 10 minutes, he's going to wobble on his chair and he falls down. And he does do that every time when after 10 minutes, then you get more exact information. And then also when what you see when he's concentrating and not doing the wobbling on the chair, for example. So what we have to learn is to be precise. And
how do you then write that from the perspective of the student or the parent or the social environment? How do you write about that type of behavior?
Yeah, for example, I had a conversation or I have asked a question to the pupil gave me an answer. And he explained something that's objective because, and then you write down the pupil said or the parent says. But a lot of the things I see, for example, I saw a report and the father was always problematic. If he was at home, he was problematic, but also when he was abroad, it was problematic. So yeah, sometimes, so it is really, so yeah. So that is what I mean with subjective and interpretation, or a parent, a mother who is working and has a different is working in an environment. She has no phone with her, And then the teacher, this is very difficult to reach the parent because she doesn't like to wear a phone. That's subjective. And afterwards it was not allowed because of the working company to have a phone. So it's sometimes we make interpretations and they're not real. And that is what we tried to solve. And now our two students from Anouk are trying to also what we did not do. We did study all the text descriptions of teachers in a cross-sectional, very quantitative. And now we want to more focus and to what kind of words they are using, and what does that say. That is also, I think this will be give us extra information to understand better what the teacher are thinking and how we can help them. Is that a clear answer?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. We go further. Now, the third study, we wanted also to encourage teachers multi-perspective taking, because we thought, yeah, it's necessary, and we developed an evidence-based blended teacher training, wegwijs in gedrag, guiding in behavior, and it is based on several known theories. And what we also did do is, what is teaching? And what is important for teachers, how to learn? What is their profession? And we made a very practical teacher training where they can also do the exercise it also in the actual practice of their classroom. And it is blended because it is not only 5 physical meetings, but also online in a learning community, and it is based on the virtual action learning, so that the meetings, physics and online, is more yin and yang, and to accelerate the learning. That what to be developed. We tested it also, and tested also with the teachers, and did do a pre-test, and now last year it was for real, and we had 29 primary school teachers with 58 diet students with disruptive behavior according to the teacher herself. And we had a whole battery of instruments in the pre and the post-test. The strengths and difficulties questionnaire, the self-efficacy, the student relationship questionnaire, and we looked again to the needs-based case reports, and also semi-structured interviews about what the teacher and the trainers did experience, perceived as learning outcome. And we now looking at all the data, but I can already tell that the self-efficacy is significant better. The teachers perceive the behavior as less bad. That is really important, and the self-efficacy did with. So I know we are analyzing the rest. That's for the next time, perhaps. Yeah. Questions?
Great. We have 10 minutes left for any other questions. There might be. We already had quite a lot of them during the presentation, obviously. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, actually. So earlier you mentioned that it's subjective if the teacher, for example, writes, oh, the parent told me that last night they had a problem with so-and-so because he, threw the chair on the ground or something like this.
Yeah.
So would that be considered a weakness or a strength?
Yeah, that is now difficult to just because all is related to the question you have about the child. Right. You want to understand and analyze what is the behavior. And when for example, when the parents told you of the teacher about an intervention they made that helped and stop the aggressiveness, that is that protective. Or when you know that the child made 10 minutes and after that stopped and quiet and told about, that is that also. So it is always according to the result, and to the context.
Yeah. So how did the parent react? Yeah. How did the child react? And if that was positive, then that would be a strength.
Yeah. And what we also learn, teachers, is that when you see your weaknesses, go always searching for some protectives. Because what is the problem with only looking to problems and weaknesses? We are going to intervene on the weaknesses, but the strengths and the protectives help us to find solutions. And it's really more when we can say to the child, oh, after 10 minutes you stopped and you were crying. Yeah. And you told us about what was the problem with you. Then you can say it again, and you can say it again. Then you get a positive intervention, and that helps the child better than always hearing what you are doing wrong and trying to adjusting that.
Okay, so then the behavior that is discussed would be described as a weakness, let's say, but then one strength is from the parents is how they responded to.
Yeah, and that is also the same with in the classroom or with a teacher or with the student himself. Is when a student is not concentrating and understands he can't concentrate himself, then you think, oh, this is a really big problem. But when you go search in what moments we can't concentrate, then you are going to more being objective. And then you can also ask the question, when can we concentrate? What is then the context to concentrate? What's the subject? Is that a subject of interest? And then you know, oh wait, we had a boy, I remember now a boy, and he didn't like me. He was always doing it wrong, and he had always in the extra instruction group for reading. And he didn't like reading anymore. But then there came a new boy, and he was really, he was mentally and physically handicapped. And he came to the school and he stayed in a summer school class. And then the boy found out that the other boy loved to listen to stories. And then the boy decided to go every day. The teacher allowed him to read. And that boy was really always patient and did not say remarks and was happy that the boy read from him the stories and did do with his hands, well, very difficult like that. And the boy came and he did get enthusiastic about reading. And that is what we have to find out. And therefore it is important to look properly and to step in the shoes of the other person.
And so this teacher training, the advice in Kudra is about how to do something like this and how to really look at the environmental factors, decide, okay, now what is our next step based on when this is occurring and how it is occurring.
And also the teachers say, says understanding the behavior for the child, but it's more understanding my behavior, my norms, my experience, how that influence my way of looking, and how I can detect by myself my interpretations, and how I can derail them to take the perspective of the other. So, and that is really, it is really in the basic form of human behavior and the behavior of the teacher. They're really excited. They don't want to stop anymore. I've already teachers who they do the first training, because we're now in the 3rd year, and they started now a teacher training to learn it for other teachers. So they say when you first get involved with this way of thinking, you don't want to stop, you can't think any more different.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
We have 4 minutes left, maybe one more question if there is one.